Friends, let us pause for a moment and consider the nature of isolation. To be chosen to stand out from the crowd, to feel the weight of purpose heavy on your shoulders is, in many ways, to be disconnected. But this disconnection, this isolation, is not necessarily the curse it is often made out to be. It is instead the crucible in which one's true self is forged. When we speak of chosen ones, we do not mean the grandiose individuals others might admire from afar. No, we speak of those who feel a deep sense of calling, a purpose that demands solitude. They are not, as society would tell them, incomplete. Rather, they are whole in ways that others may never truly comprehend. In the modern world, there is an expectation that we must form romantic connections to validate our existence. The chosen ones, however, often find themselves apart from this norm. Their hearts may yearn for connection, yes, but they also know that love, as society defines it, does not fulfill the deeper call of the soul. Romantic relationships in their most conventional form serve as mirrors reflecting our desires, our needs, our fears. Yet for the chosen ones, such mirrors often present distorted images. Their journey is not about finding validation from another, but discovering the vastness of their own being. They are asked to question, what if my completeness does not lie in the arms of another? Indeed, there is a peculiar beauty in isolation. In the silence, there is room for reflection. In solitude, one can confront their innermost truths without the noise of external expectations. It is in this stillness that the chosen ones learn to listen not to the clamor of the world, but to the quiet whisper of their own essence. Yet, in a world that elevates romantic love to the highest pedestal, the chosen ones may feel the sting of longing. But let us not confuse longing with necessity. The craving for romantic connection is often not the call of the heart, but the clamor of the ego, seeking external validation for an internal wound. True love, the kind that connects all beings, does not require a partner. It exists in the space between breaths, in the flow of energy that connects everything to everything else. The nature of the chosen one is a concept that seems both elusive and paradoxical. It is not about privilege or special treatment, nor is it a label that one wears proudly. The chosen one is not someone who has been anointed by others, nor is it someone who seeks distinction from the crowd. Rather, it is an individual who feels a deep, almost inescapable pull towards something greater than themselves, a force that sets them apart. This force, however, does not act in obvious, tangible ways. It does not declare itself in neon lights or loud, boisterous commands. It speaks quietly, sometimes inaudibly, as though calling from the very core of one's being. To be chosen is to recognize that one is on a path that does not necessarily align with the conventional trajectory of life. While others may be caught in the rush of societal expectations, building families, advancing careers, seeking love, the chosen one feels something deeper or intimate, pulling them away from those familiar pursuits. It is not that they reject the world around them, no. They are simply aware of the illusion that it presents. They see the false promises of fleeting joys, shallow achievements, and surface-level relationships. They know that their task is something far more profound. Being chosen is not about standing above others, but rather standing outside of the prescribed narratives that shape the collective experience. It is about embodying a role that does not fit the mold society has created, a role that at times demands the chosen one to step into the unknown, into the void where answers are not handed out, but discovered through an uncharted journey. This journey is not one of comfort or easy rewards, but one of deep inner transformation, where the individual must constantly question their identity, their desires, and the very nature of their existence. It is, paradoxically, a journey that often leads to greater solitude. In this solitude, the chosen one learns something profound about themselves. They begin to recognize that their separateness is not a flaw, nor a punishment, but a gift. It is in being apart from the masses that they come to understand the truth of their own being. They realize that perhaps the very act of feeling different or isolated is an invitation to awaken to something beyond the mundane, beyond the temporary distractions that fill the lives of most people. It is in this space of detachment that they are free to question, to explore, and to see the world not as it is presented to them by society, but as it truly is, unfiltered, unmediated, raw. To be chosen is to be driven by a purpose that is not always clear, but one that feels compelling nonetheless. It is the sense of being called to something that transcends personal gain, that cannot be easily articulated or understood by others. The chosen one does not necessarily seek fame, power, or accolades. They seek truth, depth, and understanding. It is this quiet, resolute pursuit that often leads them to isolation. The world does not easily accommodate those who do not conform to its expectations, and so the chosen one is, in many ways, isolated by their very nature. They may find themselves misunderstood, disconnected from those who are caught in the rush of daily life, unable to relate to the pursuit of shallow goals or the distractions that occupy most people's minds. But there is a strange beauty in this isolation. It is not a cold, empty loneliness, but a fertile ground for self-discovery. The chosen one learns that true connection is not found in the approval or recognition of others, but in the deep, unspoken bond that exists between all things. They come to understand that their solitude is not a barrier to love or connection, but a space in which to cultivate their own inner wisdom, a wisdom that is, in its purest form, beyond words, and beyond thoughts and beyond the limitations of the ego. The nature of the chosen one is thus defined not by what they have, but by what they have been willing to surrender. They have surrendered the need for external validation, the need for a conventional path, and the need for comfort in the familiar. In doing so, they have opened themselves to the mysteries of existence, to a deeper connection with the universe, and to an understanding of their place within it. It is not an easy path, nor one that is often celebrated, but it is one that is deeply meaningful for those who have the courage to walk it. And while the world may not always understand, the chosen one knows, deep within their being, that they are following a path that is uniquely their own. Romantic connection, in its most profound sense, acts as a mirror, an instrument, that reflects not just the surface of one's emotions or desires, but the depths of one's psyche, the very contours of one's being. When two individuals come together in a romantic bond, they are, in essence, looking at themselves through the eyes of another. Yet the reflection they see is often clouded by their own projections, by the stories they tell themselves about who they are, what they seek, and what they need. The romantic partner becomes both the mirror and the canvas, reflecting their desires, their fears, and their hidden desires, while simultaneously being painted with the brushstrokes of the other's emotional landscapes. This is the paradox of romantic love. The mirror it provides is not a simple one, not one that reflects an image in clear and static form. Instead, it is a distorted, shifting, and sometimes uncomfortable mirror, shaped not only by the raw beauty of the connection, but by the shadows of the individuals themselves. In the moments of deepest connection, the romantic partner may reveal to the other aspects of themselves that they have long kept hidden, aspects that have remained buried beneath layers of cultural conditioning, family influence, and personal insecurities. In this moment, love becomes a powerful force of revelation, showing both individuals not just what they want to see, but what they need to see. Yet this mirror does not always reflect the idealized version of love that we may long for. It often brings to light the flaws, the wounds, and the unspoken anxieties that lie dormant within us. When we look into the eyes of someone we love, we see not just the image of another person, but the reflection of our own unhealed scars, our unresolved needs, and our unmet desires. The romantic connection holds up a mirror to our vulnerabilities, forcing us to confront parts of ourselves that we may have avoided or denied for years. It is in this reflection that we see both our beauty and our darkness, the parts of ourselves that we wish to deny, but also the parts that we must embrace if we are ever to experience true love. There is, too, a deeper layer to this mirror. It does not merely reflect the persona we project into the world, but also the essence of who we truly are beneath the masks we wear. In the presence of a romantic partner, there is a unique opportunity to peel away those layers of pretense, to drop the carefully constructed facades that we have spent years building. And yet, this is not always a comfortable experience. For when the masks come off, what remains is often a raw and vulnerable self, one that may not always conform to the expectations of society or even to the idealized vision of love that we hold in our minds. In this rawness, however, there lies the possibility of authentic connection, one that transcends the superficial and touches the soul. But the challenge lies in the fact that not everyone is prepared to face what this mirror reveals. Romantic relationships often become battlegrounds for the ego, a place where the self attempts to defend its image, its desires, and its illusions. When the mirror reflects something we are not ready to accept, when it shows us our fears, our wounds, our insecurities, we may react with defensiveness, denial, or even anger. The reflection becomes too much to bear, and rather than allowing ourselves to see it for what it is, we turn away, projecting blame onto the other person, accusing them of causing the discomfort we feel. However, to truly understand the power of romantic connection as a mirror, we must learn to see beyond these projections. We must look at the reflection with eyes that are open, eyes that are willing to embrace what is uncomfortable, what is painful, and what is revealing. For in doing so, we begin to realize that our romantic partner is not simply a mirror of who we are in the moment, but a catalyst for who we have the potential to become. It is only when we allow ourselves to truly see the reflection in all its complexity and depth that we can begin to heal, to grow, and to experience love in its truest form. Yet, the mirror of romantic connection does not merely reflect our individual selves, it also reflects the dynamic between two individuals, their shared experiences, their mutual desires, and their collective vulnerabilities. The relationship itself becomes a kind of mirror, revealing not just who we are as individuals, but who we are together. It is in the interplay between two souls, each carrying their own story, their own wounds, and their own loss, and their own aspirations, that a new reflection emerges, a reflection that is not simply the sum of two parts, but something far greater. something that transcends the individual and speaks to the deeper connection that binds them together. In this shared space, the romantic bond becomes a mirror that reflects not just the self, but the dance of two selves coming together, moving apart, clashing, harmonizing, and ultimately evolving. And in this evolution, there is the potential for transformation, for both individuals to see not only the flaws they must confront within themselves, but also the beauty that emerges when they learn to love each other not despite their imperfections, but because of them. This is the power of romantic connection as a mirror. It shows us who we are, who we were, and who we are becoming. It forces us to confront our own humanity, our own weaknesses, and our own potential for growth. And if we are brave enough to face the reflection, to see it for all that it is, we find that the mirror does not merely show us ourselves, but a path, a way forward, one that is filled with the possibility of deeper love, greater understanding, and true connection. Isolation, when viewed through the lens of spiritual awakening, becomes a path, an unexpected and, at times, misunderstood path leading not to desolation, but to liberation. It is, paradoxically, in being apart from the noise of the world, in withdrawing from the daily demands and distractions of society, that one begins to hear the whisper of the soul, calling with a quiet intensity. This solitude is not the absence of connection, but a deeper invitation to embrace the most profound form of connection to oneself, to the universe, and to the very core of existence. In a world that encourages constant interaction, social validation, and external achievements, isolation appears as a paradox, an anomaly to be avoided. Yet it is through the voluntary withdrawal from the outside world that one discovers the immense wellspring of life that lies within. In the stillness of solitude, the mind, which so often races with thoughts, becomes calm, and the heart, which beats with the rhythms of the collective, begins to find its own pulse. The external world, with all of its noise, begins to fade into the background, and what remains is a profound encounter with the essence of being. The noise of the world is silenced not by force, but by a natural unfolding of the self, a natural return to the simplicity of being without the need for constant doing. This path of isolation is not one of mere physical withdrawal, nor is it about escaping from the world in the sense of renouncing everything. It is rather an inward journey, a turning away from the distractions that keep the mind restless, and a turning inward toward the heart of experience itself. The chosen individual who steps onto this path is not running away from society, but moving toward something more essential, something that transcends the temporary and the transient. In this space, there are no external distractions to deflect attention from the quiet, persistent call of truth. No longer distracted by the ever-demanding expectations of others, the individual begins to see that the most important relationship is not with the world, but with the self that is connected to all things, yet remains uniquely and beautifully separate in its experience. It is in isolation that one is able to see the mind for what it is, a swirling mass of thoughts, beliefs, desires, and projections. In the quiet of solitude, these mental constructions lose their power, and one begins to witness the mind as a mere phenomenon, a passing wave in the vast ocean of consciousness. In the absence of external validation, the mind is no longer busy with the task of proving itself, of seeking recognition, or of defending its image. Instead, it becomes aware of its own transience, its own impermanence, and in this awareness, the individual begins to experience a sense of liberation. The mind is no longer seen as an entity that must be followed or controlled, but as a river that flows naturally without the need for manipulation. This path also reveals the deeper truth about connection, that connection to the world does not require constant interaction or external affirmation. True connection arises when one comes into harmony with their own being. It is a state of being deeply rooted in oneself, not in the validation of others. And when one is rooted in this understanding, they are paradoxically more connected to the world than ever before. It is in the depths of solitude that the individual can see the interconnectedness of all things, the delicate thread that binds together every person, every creature, every moment. This interconnectedness is not something that is grasped through intellectual understanding, but something that is felt, experienced, and embodied when the self is no longer divided from the rest of the world. Isolation, then, becomes a fertile ground for the discovery of one's true nature. Without the distractions of daily life, the mind is free to explore its deeper layers, to question its assumptions, and to uncover the truths that have long been hidden beneath the surface. In this space, the individual finds that the idea of being separate from the world is an illusion, a temporary state that dissolves as one moves deeper into the heart of their own being. It is here that one comes to understand that the self is not a solitary, isolated entity, but a dynamic part of a vast, interconnected whole. The feeling of isolation, once seen as a limitation, becomes the very gateway to a profound realization of unity, of oneness with all of existence. Moreover, isolation invites the individual to confront the fundamental questions of life. Who am I? What is the nature of reality? What is the purpose of existence? These questions, often drowned out by the noise of modern life, arise with great clarity in the stillness of solitude. And in their asking, they lead to a deeper understanding of life, not as something external to be understood or controlled, but as something that is lived and experienced in every moment. The answers, if they come at all, are not intellectual or conceptual, but intuitive, felt in the body, in the breath, and in the silence of the heart. The answers are fixed but are fluid, ever-changing, arising from the same source that connects all beings, all experiences, all moments. There is, however, a danger in misunderstanding the nature of isolation. It is not about the rejection of life, nor is it about withdrawal into a self-absorbed state. It is rather about learning to be present with life without clinging to it. It is about learning to be fully alive in each moment, without the need to hold on to any one experience, to any one idea, or to any one identity. True isolation is not about being removed from the world, but about being so fully present in the world that one is no longer defined by it. It is the realization that the self is not a separate, isolated entity, but a part of the vast, ever-changing flow of life. And it is in this realization that isolation becomes not a place of loneliness, but a place of immense peace, freedom, and connection. In the end, isolation is a spiritual path, not because it leads to something outside of the self, but because it reveals the vastness of what is within. It shows that in solitude we are not abandoned, but rather come into the presence of our truest selves, our most authentic being. It is a journey into the heart of life itself, a journey that leads not away from the world, but into a deeper and more intimate connection with it. In this space, the individual discovers that there is no separation, no division, but only an ever-present unity, a unity that transcends all notions of isolation and connectedness, and exists as the very fabric of existence itself. The illusion of the need for connection is one of the most profound and pervasive myths that governs human existence. It is an illusion, not because connection itself is unimportant or unnecessary, but because the belief that we need to be constantly connected to others in order to find fulfillment is a misunderstanding of the very nature of life. It is the misconception that we are inherently separate, isolated beings dependent upon others to complete us, to validate us, and to give us meaning. In truth, this need is not a genuine need, but a craving, a longing born from a misunderstanding of who we truly are. At the heart of this illusion lies the idea that we are incomplete without the presence of others, that our identity, our happiness, and our sense of purpose are somehow dependent upon the external relationships we cultivate. We look to others to affirm our worth, to make us feel seen, and to offer us a sense of belonging. And in doing so, we fall into the trap of believing that love and connection are things that must be sought outside of ourselves, rather than realized from within. We believe that without others, we would be lost, adrift in a meaningless world, unable to find our way. This belief, deeply ingrained in the collective consciousness, is the foundation of much of our suffering, because it perpetuates the idea that we are incomplete and need something outside of us to fill the emptiness we feel inside. However, this emptiness, this sense of lack, is not an inherent part of our being. It is a product of our minds, of the stories we tell ourselves about who we are and what we need. It arises when we fail to recognize the truth of our own existence, that we are already whole, already complete, just as we are. The sense of separation, the feeling that we are somehow apart from the rest of the world, is a construct of the ego, a false sense of identity that convinces us that we must seek fulfillment from external sources. But when we examine this belief more deeply, we see that it is not rooted in truth, but in illusion. The truth is that connection does not arise from an external source, but from an inner recognition of the interconnectedness of all things. It is in realizing that we are not separate from the world around us, that we are not isolated islands adrift in a vast ocean, but rather that we are part of an intricate living tapestry, woven together with all beings, all creatures, and all elements of the universe. The illusion of the need for connection disappears when we awaken to this deeper understanding. Connection is not something we need to seek, because it is already present. It is not something that must be earned or achieved, but something that is already inherent in our experience of being alive. It is in the recognition of this unity that the true nature of connection is revealed not as something we seek outside of ourselves, but as something we already are, something we embody in every breath, every heartbeat, every thought. When we let go of the illusion that we need others to make us whole, we begin to see the profound beauty of our solitude. Solitude, in this sense, is not the absence of connection, but the space in which connection can be fully realized. It is in solitude that we can come to know ourselves, to explore the depths of our own being, to discover the vastness of the universe that resides within us. It is in this space that we can recognize that we are not alone, but part of the endless flow of existence. The need for external connection falls away, not because we reject others, but because we realize that our true nature is already one with all things. This understanding does not mean that we must renounce relationships or live in isolation. On the contrary, it allows us to engage with others from a place of wholeness, not from a place of hollowness, not from a place of neediness or dependency. When we recognize that we are already connected to everything and everyone, our relationships become more authentic, more compassionate, and more fulfilling. We no longer enter into relationships with the expectation that they will complete us, but with the awareness that we are complete as we are, complete as we are, and that our connections with others are expressions of the shared unity we all participate in. We no longer seek validation, but offer love freely without attachment or expectation. The illusion of the need for connection also obscures the understanding that true connection is not about possession or attachment. It is not about clinging to others or seeking to control or define the relationships we form. True connection arises when we let go of our need to possess, to dominate, or to fix others. It arises when we embrace the impermanence of all things and recognize that every moment, every interaction is a fleeting expression of the whole. Connection, then, becomes an act of letting go, of being fully present without the need to hold on to anything. It is a recognition that each encounter is a dance, a meeting of two beings who are free to come together, to share, and to part without the need for attachment or permanence. When we let go of the belief that we need others to complete us, we open ourselves to a deeper, more expansive experience of connection. We stop seeking validation and begin to experience the world as a vast network of interconnected beings, each playing its part in the greater whole. The need for external connection falls away, and in its place arises a sense of profound peace and contentment. We no longer feel the need to grasp for love or approval, because we recognize that we are already loved, already complete, already part of everything. This realization does not diminish our capacity for love or connection with others, rather, it enhances it. It allows us to love more freely, more fully, and more deeply, because we are no longer driven by the need to possess, to claim, or to control. We love because love is our true nature, not because we seek something in return. And in this love we experience a connection that transcends the illusion of separation, a connection that is both deeply personal and universally shared. In this way, the illusion of the need for connection is not a denial of the importance of relationships, but an invitation to see them in a new light. It is an invitation to release the need to grasp at love, and to recognize that we are already part of the infinite wheel. The realization of our inherent connection to all things dissolves the illusion of separation, and in its place we find a love that is boundless, a connection that is ever present, and a peace that transcends all boundaries. The concept of connection, when viewed through the lens of romantic love, often becomes confined within the boundaries of human relationships, as though the essence of connection is only possible through the intertwining of two individuals. We have been conditioned to believe that love, the deepest form of connection, must manifest in romantic bonds between two people, that it is in this exchange that the highest form of intimacy is found. Yet, if we pause and observe more closely, we begin to uncover a far broader, more universal connection that extends far beyond the confines of romance. This connection is not limited by the fleeting nature of romantic love, nor bound by the conditions of human expectations. It is a connection that is inherent, ever present, and woven into the very fabric of the universe itself. The first step in understanding this universal connection is to realize that it is not something to be sought after, but something that is already alive within and around us. It exists not as a special or exceptional bond, but as the natural state of being. The belief that love must be confined to a specific form, romantic or otherwise, prevents us from recognizing the vast, unifying force that is present in all things. This connection is not exclusive. It is not something that exists only between two individuals in a romantic or familial sense. Rather, it is the fundamental thread that weaves together all of existence, the underlying unity that binds together the stars in the heavens, the earth beneath our feet, and the countless forms of life that inhabit this planet. When we begin to shift our focus away from romantic connection as the highest or most desirable form of love, we begin to see the limitless forms in which this universal connection manifests. It is present in the most mundane moments of daily life, in the simple act of breathing, in the exchange of a smile between strangers, in the quiet understanding that passes between friends without the need for words. It is the connection that exists between a person and the natural world in the rustling of leaves in the wind, the warmth of sunlight on the skin, and the vastness of the sky stretching out above. It is in the feeling of awe that arises when one stands before a majestic mountain or gazes at the endless ocean, recognizing that they are part of something much greater than themselves. It is the silent communion between an individual and the universe, where no words are spoken, yet the deepest truth is shared. This universal connection is not limited by time or space. It transcends the boundaries of the individual and the temporal, reaching far beyond the human experience. It is the connection that links us to the past and the future, to the ancestors who have walked this earth before us, and to the generations who will follow. It is the recognition that our existence is but a brief moment in the vast continuum of life, yet we are intrinsically tied to everything that has come before and everything that is yet to come. We are not isolated individuals, but participants in a grand, ongoing dance, a movement of life that is constantly unfolding and evolving. One of the most profound aspects of this universal connection is that it is not dependent on external circumstances or relationships. Unlike romantic love, which can fluctuate and shift with the passing of time, this connection remains constant, unwavering, and always available. It is not subject to the whims of human emotion or the changing tides of personal relationships. It is not something that can be lost or found, but something that is simply realized and embraced. The recognition of this universal connection is not an attainment or a goal to be reached, but a realization that comes when we let go of the belief in separation and see the interconnectedness of all things. It is the moment when we cease seeing ourselves as isolated beings and begin to experience the world as an integrated whole, where everything is inextricably linked, where the boundaries between self and other dissolve into a seamless unity. This understanding of connection is liberating, for it frees us from the false belief that we need others to complete us, or that we are somehow lacking without the validation or approval of others. It dissolves the illusion that love is something that must be earned or sought after, and reveals that love is something that is inherently present in every moment of existence. We do not need to search for it, because it is already within us, surrounding us, and flowing through us at all times. It is in the very breath we take, in the pulse of life that beats within our hearts, and in the awareness that all things are interconnected in a vast and beautiful web of existence. When we begin to recognize this universal connection, we realize that romantic love is only one of many expressions of the deeper, more profound connection that binds us to all things. While romantic love can be a beautiful and transformative experience, it is not the only way in which love is experienced. There is a love that transcends the personal, a love that is not limited by individual desires or preferences, but that is universal, expansive, and unconditional. This love is the love that exists between all beings, between the human and the non-human, between the living and the non-living, between the past, the present, and the future. It is a love that is rooted in the recognition of oneness, of unity, and of the fundamental truth that all things are connected. In embracing this universal connection, we begin to see that we are not alone in this world. The belief in our isolation, in our separateness from others, begins to crumble, and we recognize that we are part of a much larger whole. This connection is not something that must be nurtured or created, but something that is always there, waiting to be acknowledged. It is not something that can be controlled or manipulated, but something that we can only open ourselves to, allow ourselves to experience, and be transformed by. When we recognize this connection, we understand that we are not merely individuals striving for personal fulfillment, but expressions of life itself, part of a vast interconnected web of existence. This realization of universal connection also brings with it a profound sense of peace and contentment. No longer do we need to grasp at relationships or external validation, for we recognize that we are already whole. We are not dependent on the approval of others, nor do we need to seek out romantic love to feel complete. Instead, we find joy and fulfillment in the simple awareness that we are part of something much larger than ourselves. We can love freely without attachment or expectation, because we know that love is not something that can be possessed, but something that flows naturally from the recognition of our interconnectedness with all things. Ultimately, the understanding of a universal connection beyond romance invites us to expand our definition of love, to see it not as something confined to the personal or the romantic, but as something that is woven into the very fabric of life itself. Love, in its most expansive form, is the recognition that all things are interconnected, that we are not isolated beings, but integral parts of a vast, living whole. It is a love that transcends boundaries, that unites us with the world around us, and that connects us to the deepest truths of existence. It is a love that is always available, always present, and always waiting to be embraced. When we open ourselves to this love, we discover that we are never truly alone, that we are always connected, and that in this connection we find our deepest peace and fulfillment. In the end, we come to realize that the search for connection, whether in romance or in the fleeting bonds of daily life, is not a quest for something we lack, but a journey to rediscover what has always been within us. The illusion of isolation fades when we awaken to the truth that we are not separate, but part of an endless dance of life, interconnected with all that exists. Connection is not something to be sought, but something to be remembered, experienced in every breath, every moment, every glance at the world around us. When we cease searching for external validation, we come to recognize that the deepest love is not found in others, but in the simple realization that we are, always have been, and always will be, a vital part of the vast, living whole. In this understanding there is freedom, there is peace, and above all, there is love unconditional, infinite, and ever present.